Hello and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guests today broadcast their epic content to the 5 boroughs across the material plane and beyond. Their quest for sonic satisfaction means there's no sleep till Arrakis as they map out mad dungeons, smash out the side quests, and conquer the world. With a skilled scaled swordsman and a striped wonder worker leading the charge, we don our dark sunglasses, kickstart the kick drum, set our levels to epic, and check it out with Steve Albertson and Andrew Belluri, aka Dragon Warrior and Tiger Wizard of Epic Levels. Welcome, both of you, to the show.
That's an amazing introduction. I don't think I've ever heard anything so beautiful.
Yeah, well thought out. I could tell you've listened to our music and our podcast. So exciting.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you both for providing so much for me to put into that introduction, and a lot of which we will touch on later in the episode. So before we get into sort of why I originally sort of invited you on, or why we sort of agreed to get you on the show, how did each of you get into tabletop role-playing games, please?
Well, I'm so glad you asked this question. It's something that I get asked frequently, and as Steve is likely to point out later on, I usually give a very long explanation of how one thing led to the other, with a childhood in comic books, and then miniature wargaming, and then friends that were into Dungeons and Dragons. But I think I will try to sum it up into, I got into role-playing games the same way I go into every room in a dungeon, which is I just kick the door in and burst into it.
Nice.
Yeah, but I think you go a little more than that. So as a 12-year-old, Andrew, I think 12, right? Like started working
I was 11
in
when I
the
started
child
working.
minds of comic books, and then got into Mage Knight.
Mage Knight,
and always
Magic
wanted to hang out the
cards.
older kids, right, to get into D&D.
Yep. Yeah, there were some older kids that were playing role-playing games. I wasn't old or cool enough to play, but I was plenty cool enough to play Magic the Gathering cards and miniature wargaming. So it wasn't until I was a teenager I actually got to play in I guess I was already a teenager when I was 12. No, 13. That's when you become a teenager, right?
That's where the teen
In some
bit comes
countries.
from,
Yeah. Later teens.
The
I was
teen
able
part of
to
it.
drive an automobile and get myself to someone's house to roll up some characters. And been playing ever since. I was just gonna say, I think the first system I played in was I think it was 3rd edition. I think I played in 3rd edition first. This is in the 90s. And then after that, I switched over to some White Wolf games. Played some White Wolf games with some friends, and then came back for 3.5 and played 3.5 pretty much until 5th edition. We had a quick stint with Pathfinder, I think, in between.
Yeah.
Steve, you want to talk a little bit about your past? Yes, with Steve. Many games have I played with Steve.
Many a game together. Mine starts off where punk rock, Dungeons and Dragons, drugs, all of this stuff came together in the same kind of afternoon, evening. So I've always had this idea that playing RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons in particular was always like a countercultural kind of movement, where it was always like this kind of dorky thing that people would like, crap on when you talk about it. So I've always had this I want to put it front and center in your face kind of attitude pretty much my entire life. So it became just as much a part of my personality as skateboarding and punk rock shows when I was like a teenager. I first got started, like it was like this guy named Jeff in high school. I went over to his house and we were listening to like Rancid and Op Ivy and Buzzcocks and stuff. And for like the first time, it was like life changing. And then we played D&D and like all of this stuff kind of together. I was like, it all goes together. But very shortly after that, I got my hands on a book of Mage, The Ascension from White Wolf. And that was the first thing I started playing like on a very regular basis. And I had no idea how to play role-playing games. I didn't understand the idea of a dice pool. I was rolling a D10 like we roll a D20 with things now, like one D10 to see how it works out. And then I met some other friends later on in high school that also played D&D, all separate. Like we didn't know each other, but like I always brought it up. I still bring it up when I am in like groups of people. And we started playing a bunch of like second edition and then started digging into other games. And then that kind of just grew into a whole lifetime of it. So I played music my whole life. I had a band called like Dr. Killbot, where uh, one of our music videos ends up looking like the old Monster Manual first edition. Like I've always, and this is like in the early 2000s. So I've always been putting like these D&D kind of things front and center of every record I've done, until I met Andrew, who wanted to like do like some nerdcore D&D style rap stuff. And it was kind of a fun uh, get away from the punk rock side of things, get more to the hip hop side of things, and just write comedy around all of the stuff we've spent our lives loving and building friendships around.
That's
So the main thing about D&D is about building community, and that's what Epic Levels is all about as well.
yeah, no, amazing.
Hmm.
So you've mentioned each of you have a winding path, found White Wolf independently, and sort of eventually became this group Epic Levels. But how did the two of you actually meet? You mentioned you met Andrew, and there was. I'm just intrigued as to how the two of you sort of came together in that.
So I'm
Sure.
from
So
Chicago. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead,
Steve's from
Andrew.
Chicago, and when he moved to Atlanta, he does what Steve does. Like the moment he comes in contact with a new group of people, and he says, "What the hell is up with Dungeons and Dragons and you nerds?"
Who plays
And
D&D in this room?
yeah, who wants to roll dice with me? And
Yeah, who
so
wants to learn?
yeah, so you got a job at a coffee shop. That who worked at the coffee shop too? Was it
So
Nikki?
Nikki worked at a coffee
Yeah,
shop, and Chris too, but Nikki didn't have anything to do with this. Nikki, now we bring
it was
her up
Chris.
because she is now married to Rob, Andrew's sibling, who also engineers and backup vocals and does the podcast with us as well. So I met Nikki at the coffee shop, and Rob played in a band with me called Sex Barbecue in Atlanta after I moved there too. So like it's all
All linked.
in the same community. So we met this woman named Chris who knew this guy named Josh, and Josh was running a game with this group, and Andrew was part of that group. So when I got to Atlanta, I had this meeting at Manuel's Tavern, which is a staple of Atlanta, Georgia, to just talk about what kind of character I wanted to play in the 3.5 game they were running at the time. And yeah, so then I met Andrew, and it turned out me and Andrew were equal parts excessive in the love of the hobby, and that's why we were able to hit this off.
Yeah, maybe a little too much. But that table has spawned some friendships and some community that like are still strong today. That was like what, almost 15 years ago now? Maybe
Yes,
longer?
2011, I
Wow.
moved to Atlanta.
Okay, so not quite that long. 12 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
while. And I ended up moving to Los Angeles for like 5 years, and then COVID hit. And then I came back. I put all my stuff into storage. I was sick of not seeing people. So then I spent the last 2 years bouncing between Chicago, where my family and people I grew up with and all that is at, and Atlanta. And then this last year, I spent the whole year living with Andrew and his wife, Becky. And we just had work our day jobs, which is printing t-shirts for RPG stuff for Andrew and doing music PR for me. And then at night we do all of the epic level stuff. But it was fun living there, so I could just we'd walk down for breakfast and then talk about stuff that we were working on and goals and all that. It was cool.
That's an amazing story. Or sequence of events. It's an ongoing story, a saga, 12 years in the making. But once you met and you engaged and found each other on that same level, I'm going there with it. When did that turn into a podcast? When did that turn into Epic Levels music creation? When did that become this entertainment juggernaut that you have created?
I think it was like after we went above level 20, right?
Yeah, once we got above level 20, things got epic.
Yep.
Nice.
But there was a time, so Andrew wanted to make D&D music. Like Andrew brought that to me.
Hmm.
Like we'd always been kind of making things on our own. Andrew's an illustrator by trade, and but we also a musician. So like Andrew and I both have played in separate bands, but never in the same one. So there was a time, I don't even know, it was a while
I
ago
feel
where
like
we
we
were
were like
just,
kind of in between bands. At least I was in between bands at
I've
the
never been
moment.
in between a band.
Well, Steve always
No,
has like
Steve
2 or
is the
3
band.
bands going.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve always has like 2 or 3 bands going at a time. So I'm like I'm a one band at a time kind of guy. So I was in between bands and wanting to do something musical, but I wanted to do something that was not like nodding towards Dungeons and Dragons or role playing games. I wanted to do something that was fully role playing games. And yeah, and so we started going over to my brother Rob's house, and we would just sort of fiddle around with beats, and the two of us would write lyrics together. We wrote sort of trading back and forth. And I think at the beginning we made like maybe 2 or 3 songs, and it was kind of just for the fun of it, no real ambition. And then I think it wasn't until you moved away that we were like, oh shit, like we should really do this, and let's make it into an album. Let's round it out with a full set of songs. And then we did that.
Yeah, and I mean, even Andrew came out, like, so we're already midway through the next record. Even when I was in Los Angeles, Andrew came out to visit, and we recorded stuff in Los Angeles, preparing for this next round of stuff. And a couple singles we've released that you've referenced, Dark Sunglasses and Bugbear Barber. Like those are things that came from the Los Angeles trip. But also getting beats,
the Los Angeles tapes.
the Los Angeles tapes. Yeah. But we also worked with this guy named Mason Grant that we knew from. So there's a time when me and Andrew would go again to Manuel's Tavern every Sunday and go play Magic the Gathering and do drafts there. And it was just like a community thing. There was like probably like 20 plus people that would show up every week, majority of which were lawyers. So if like we ever got in, trouble and, we'd be able to get out. But
what's on the stack first?
Right. But we knew Mason from that. And Mason Grant also has his own game company called the Gamma Wave Games. But he did a lot of the beats for this first record. And so talking to him and getting things going, and then we gave him what we wanted, and then we get it back, and then me and Andrew would be like, all right, what does this make us think of? And then we write lyrics together. And Rob also made some beats, and another friend kind of chipped in as well.
No,
but it was a fun process.
Yeah, it sounds a lot of fun. A lot of traveling involved by the sounds of it, but a lot of fun at the same time. When did Andrew and Steve become the monikers Dragon Warrior and Tiger Wizard? When did you start really embodying those roles, those monikers, those lives?
Sure. Well, so right out of college, I started an artist nonprofit here in Atlanta with some friends, and I had been experimenting with some sort of different. I'm gonna say that I was experimenting with being a pretentious artist. Like that was kind of what I was trying. I was trying to like get to that pretentious, like really high end art. I've since given that up. I am now just
lowbrow.
Lowbrow. Yeah, only drawing like monsters and interesting, as they have been called, maps. But at the time I was wanting to create this persona for myself, and much in the same way that Steve sort of had, while he was experimenting with music, always had Dungeons and Dragons sort of as a part of that. I wanted my love for fantasy role-playing games and really just high fantasy to be a part of my artist moniker. So Tiger Wizard started, I was probably 22 or 3, and I was like, this is my artist name. My artist name is Tiger Wizard. So that's where it started for me. And then it just sort of made sense when we started making music together that, well, like obviously my hip hop MC name is also Tiger Wizard. Like that's That's a no-brainer. And then I think I conned Steve into adopting Dragon Warrior. I was like, "You're so strong and big, and like you're like a dragon because you're fierce, and you're totally a Dragon Warrior."
Well, I got something to say about that too. So
Let's hear it.
when I moved to Atlanta, like there's a friend of Andrew, Rob, and our good friend Steve Brown. He's passed away now, but Steve Brown drummed in a band with me as well. And so there was me, Steve, my old business partner, who I also played in the band with me, was also Steve. I was Steve. So there were a whole bunch of Steve. So among that friend group, and I think it was even like one of Andrew's ex-girlfriends or someone else started calling me Dragon Steve, like
Oh
to
yeah,
differentiate me from like all of
from
the
all the
other
other
Steves.
Steves, yeah.
And so it kind of stemmed out from there. But like, I also don't like the idea of not using my name anymore. Like, I want to like, so with Dr. Killbot, I went by Johnny Turbo. Like, we always had like uh, these, and that one we're like, all right, you need to pick a name and it needs to fit one 70s gangster warrior style and professional wrestler. So there was like
Nice.
the Baron, and Bilbo Badass was like another guy in Dr. Killbot. But then so with Epic Levels, like well, use Dragon Warrior when we're going through it. You could listen to the first record. Andrew even calls me Dragon Steve at one point because we haven't
Yeah.
even like nailed it down yet
Hmm.
at that point. But now it's Tiger Wizard. I've taken on Dragon Warrior because you need to have that dichotomy that the wizard, the warrior, the Foffer and the Gray Mouser, or whoever is going to be the wizard and the warrior. But then we also have Zach Cowan, who produces the podcast, is Bat Alchemist, and Rob is going by the Rock Warlock.
Hmm.
So
Warlock Rock.
the Warlock Rock. I mix it up all the time. It's my cross to bear. And then we have like not official members, like our buddy Jay, who is writing the Mystic Punks RPG right now, goes by Shark Monk. So maybe we'll bring it in more of a Brockhampton style collective at some point with a bunch of animal meets class name.
Which brings me to a very important question. When we first got on this call, before I think Adam realized, I overheard you singing a little bit. I suggested that maybe Adam should join Epic Levels. So, if that was the case, what would your name be? So you would pick like some kind of fierce animal that you really enjoy,
It
and
doesn't
then
have to be fierce.
it doesn't have to be fierce. It could be whatever you want. But some other creature, right? And then some class, and you just sort of put them together in a way that is fun for you.
Okay.
Yeah, what's your go-to class, Adam? Like if you're gonna play a game, what's your
Go-to
what do you
class in
always play?
D&D got to be Ranger. Underappreciated class,
All
in my
right.
opinion. So it would be something, or Ranger, something Ranger. I will workshop that in the back of my mind and throw it out just before the end. So while I work on my identity and find myself, I'll throw it back to you two. Where can we find you on social media and on the internet so we can sort of support your content?
Sure. So very active on Instagram. It's epic_levels. We have a Patreon, which is also just patreon.com/epic levels. We're on Discord, also just epic levels.
And you can find the
Our
link for that on our website, the
yeah,
Discord link,
like yeah,
which
everything's
is
on the website.
epiclevelsrapgods.com.
Yeah, probably should have
It's,
started with that. You can get to pretty much everything from the website. So instead of trying to remember all of these things that are very similar but slightly different, just go to the website. You can get to all of these places. epiclevelsrapgods.com.
yeah, but the Patreon's great because we're
epiclevelsrapgods.com.
sending out lots of. So Andrew illustrates. So we do the Mad Dungeon podcast, in which we bring a guest on from the community. We've had people, everyone from Tim Kask, who is the first TSR employee, and Ed Greenwood, who invented the Forgotten Realms, to Keith Baker, and lots of other folks in the community. And then we make a one-page adventure that I then take all of that content, whittle it down to its foundations, and write the words that will then go on a map that's illustrated by Andrew. And then those are all available for free on our website. And several of them are also available as 11 by 17 posters that you could buy, that we have an artist do a flip side of it. So you have a fun poster size something from the episode, and then an actual playable map on the other side.
Wow. Well, I will make sure that all those links mentioned and all the other ones that I can find are down in the description below this podcast. So please scroll down, follow those links, and support Epic Levels. One of the things that we would love you to support is the, at time of recording, ongoing Kickstarter.
Armor Classy.
For the music album Armor Classy. So what has it been like sort of pushing through a Kickstarter campaign on the music you started, having sort of met in a gaming room and found a kinship for each other? What's that journey been like, and what's the dream with this Kickstarter?
Sure. Well, I can answer that. It's been great. Like, the support that we have had for this Kickstarter has been kind of overwhelming. So if you have backed it, thank you so much. If this if this didn't reach your ears in time and you missed out, like, we will have this artifact for sale at some point somewhere. So, don't fret. But it has been very flattering for me to have such overwhelming support for our very first attempt at doing a Kickstarter. We hit our goal on the first day pretty quickly, and then just people continue to support it all the way through the campaign. So if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what it is.
Please do.
So it's our full-length album, Armor Classy, and then also me and Steve took a trip to the House on the Rock, which is a weird place that you can visit if you live in America. You can live anywhere and go visit this place. It's in America, in Wisconsin. Steve, can you attempt to describe this place in a few sentences?
Let's see what we got.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
I've been there before and fell in love with this place. Andrew and I went to Gamehole Con this year, which is in Madison, Wisconsin.
That was
and
last year.
Yeah, I guess we're in 2023 now. You're right.
Yeah.
But the
Last
last one that occurred.
Yeah.
And then took an extra day because I wanted to bring Andrew to this place. It's also a main staple in Neil Gaiman's American Gods. It's where the all the stuff
carousel
happens. Mm-hmm. So House on the Rock is a man built a legit just house on this giant, 200 foot up, almost sheer rock. And then that's only part of it. It's a wild swinging bachelor pad looking thing from like space age 50s and 60s with all these weird little rooms. But on top of that, he was a collector of oddities. So it has one of the world's largest carousels that has 5 different layers on it. It has an entire room of weird doll houses. One of the rooms used to be called the Inferno Room, that then changed into the Organ Room, that looks like a giant, weird Frankenstein time travel. And it's huge. Like, I want to say room, but room doesn't even do it. It's like a warehouse.
Wow.
That it has like 50-foot tall brass, like canisters, vats. There's another room that has a giant whale, like with like sharp shark teeth for some reason, fighting a kraken that also goes up 50 feet in the air. It's massive. And like the entire room, it's not even, you can't even go through it all in one day. Me and Andrew, actually, we spent so much time just looking at all the things that like we were ushered out by a guy with a broom at the end.
Yeah, literally sweeping us out the door.
Wow.
I love this place.
He did a weird thing, which I think is super cool, but he collected these artifacts, right? Like collections of things, but he was also an artist. And I think maybe he was eccentrically wealthy, and so he had no respect for artifacts, because what he would do is he would take like a legit, real, like vintage gun and put it in a display case, and then,
mod it out.
Yeah, mod it out
crazy.
to make it look wild, and set that one right beside it. So you could have like a real artifact right next to some crazy thing that he created, but they look like they're about the same age and same type of thing. So it's hard to say like what if this is real and what if this is just like some rich lunatic's imagination going like crazy off the walls. It was super inspiring. So we wrote an adventure about it.
So what we did is we took each song off of the record and then made that a room in the dungeon.
Right.
So each room in the dungeon is a hybrid of a part of House on the Rock, Madness, and one of our songs. So it starts off where you're in a dinner party in a gallery where people are doing lawn bowling. Our first song is Rather Be Rolling, which is a song about how we'd rather be rolling dice and playing D&D with our friends than, responsible things like hanging out with our families or, building
Anything,
relationships
really.
with girlfriends or whatever. But so so it's a 10-room adventure that I wrote that Andrew illustrated that will fit in the booklet. We chose a CD over a vinyl too, just because it's a very
There were other
small,
options.
easy, manageable thing. We may at some point do a cassette or a vinyl, but we would do a different adventure for it. So our plan is to like not release this thing, only have it available as a physical item. We may waffle on that.
Don't worry, fans. The 8-track is the 8-track adventure is coming soon.
I was really hoping you'd be pitching me a mini disc, but I guess we're between eras there. So with this album, this artwork, this booklet CD that you're releasing through the Kickstarter, I checked a little earlier. Time recording, you were three or four times over the sort of the funded cost goal. That's the word, funding goal.
Blessed.
So, incredible support for the two of you and the rest of the creative team that makes up the Epics Levels sort of team. The maps you mentioned from the Mad Dungeon podcast, but that's not the only podcast you do, and I'm struggling to fathom how you find time to make all this music, fantastic music. You work on a Kickstarter, work in sort of professional lives, and do side quests.
Oh yes. Well, let's not forget that we're also both avid gamers and play in several campaigns a week. And I've recently just picked up a very time-consuming and also kind of expensive hobby of I'm getting back into Warhammer. Yeah.
There's the
So
groan.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know where this time comes from.
No, I mean we have to build out the time. That's for sure. And like even yesterday, me and Andrew got together with the rest of the team, and we are getting ready for season 2 of the Mad Dungeon podcast, where instead of doing full maps, like which were like ending up being like 2-hour episodes and a lot of work for us to like filter it down, and so we're going to, in season 2, move into doing single rooms to keep things a little bit more manageable. And then at the end of season 2, we'll put those together in some sort of packaging. We probably won't know what that is until we get deeper into it. But we've already recorded several episodes of that. But it is about
and more importantly than like manageable, because as much as there is a lot of stuff for us to do, like we love doing this stuff. So it's the main thing about the way that we've changed the format in season 2 is that it's going to open us up to having a lot more guests. And the hope is that, this smaller bite-sized format will be able to release more content. So even more stuff coming out in season 2 than what we released with the first season.
And on top of that, so this Kickstarter is not just a Kickstarter for the Armor Classy C Dungeon. It's also the Kickstarter for me and Andrew and Epic Levels as a whole, kickstarting and putting out our own projects. So both Andrew and I have several things that we've been working on for a while that is getting prepped and ready for release. So this is actually just going to be the first of a lot of stuff we have planned for 2023. So we're still building out what the rest of the year is going to look like, but we have lots of projects in the pipeline for this year. So the plan is, so with the old podcast, we were spending a lot of our time getting that stuff ready. So with this, it's still going to take a bunch of time, but it will allow us to work on these other things, zines. We have a couple core book ideas, one of which is almost completely written, but it's a matter of time. Time is the whole thing.
Gotta make time.
And at the same time, make music. So me and Andrew have also, like, to get like real how the sausage is made, we have a weekly Tuesday meeting that's normally, what is all the epic level stuff we're doing? What needs to get done? And now we're going to alternate it more to make sure that we're going to be able to keep up with music production too, which has been, it takes a lot of time to write, record, master, mix, get artwork together, get bio written, like all the things that go around, not just the music itself.
Yeah, it's I would doff the cap to the amount of work not only you put into the podcast, the maps, the Kickstarter, but the music and everything that runs behind that. But do you? You mentioned getting back into Warhammer, so you've got no downtime left. But do either of you have any downtime in between all this allocation of time to these various projects? I made a note that you do a podcast, the Total Movie Recalls. That's another project. How do you get downtime? Is there such a thing in your lives?
I mean, this is what I love doing, so it's it's a little bit in between work and fun, right? So I'm trying to make all of these things that I love. So the Total Movie Recall podcast, it's a little bit easier. That one will do a big chunks, and then we'll just go on hiatuses until we record another big chunk. And my partner in that is about to go to grad school in Wales, so we'll see how much time they have as they're working on their doctorate. So
Nice.
Isn't this Ryan's like second doctorate or second?
He loves academia, this man.
Yeah.
Ryan Mixon, my partner in Total Movie Recall.
Wow.
But I'll tell you what, my free time, like me and Andrew have talked about this a lot this week, is stress in general and dealing with stress. And one of my big stress relievers is just going to the movies. I love it. So, and I have a film degree, and so going into film stuff is very important to me. And also all this writing, I've always written forever, but like part of my degree was screenwriting. So moving screenwriting stuff into RPG and writing stuff is not a huge leap.
Yeah.
Although you're leaving characters alone and more about world building than anything else most of the time.
Well, it's all about story, right? Like we're concerned with creating stories collaboratively and creating systems where we can create stories together. So it all ties together. It's all part of the same big, beautiful bundle.
Even the format for the Mad Dungeon podcast for season 1, it's shifting a little bit as we go to season 2, is built off of like my knowledge of like Aristotle's Poetics and moving from like screenwriting formats where we start off with our initial. So what we do, we roll dice. We all roll a random number that will give us a noun, verb, or adjective. All of us, including a guest, will then say a word. We start off with initial thoughts about what those words and combinations mean. And so they could be a variety of things. And then from there, we're figuring out, starting with who is the villain. And then once we figure out who the villain is, we figure out who our friend is, who our comrade is that could help the PCs and tells them what's up. Then we figure out what the MacGuffin is, which is something that Alfred Hitchcock had coined, which is like an item or something that will get the story going that could keep it moving as well. And so we figure out what a MacGuffin is to make sure that the player characters are actually going to interact with whatever story that we're building. And then we move on to the location, like, which is the main thing. So we're building a map. But before we even get to the map part, we already know like what the story is. So based on like what the story is, that'll help us lock down what the actual location is. And so in season 2, we're condensing kind of a lot of these things into a single location instead of multiple locations.
Yeah. No, I mean, the premise and the way you structure it sounds and is fantastic, but I can see how that could create a lot of work, especially at the back end, trying to bring it all together and sort of putting it out for us to enjoy it at our leisure. So again, I've already doffed the cap; it's over there somewhere. But I go and get it and do it again.
Let me just say this too, because in addition to doing the artwork, I also do the layout. And something that I think is often overlooked is I kneecap Steve regularly by giving him a crazy word count.
It is so hard for me to hit my word
So
count every
I'm
time.
like, you're allowed to write 1,000 words about this adventure because I have to fit it all onto a page. And I can fit more words onto a page if I get really, really creative, and use a point size that will not be easy on your eyes. But it is a tremendous feat for Steve to condense, all of the crazy ideas that we come up with on the actual show and then sort of boil them down into like a delicious sauce that is actually makes sense. So it's a pretty huge load for Steve. The writing part, I feel like it's a lot easier to just kind of create an adventure from scratch, without sort of the need to stick to these sometimes non sequitur concepts that can get introduced in an improv show. And I just have to say, like, while we're doffing hats, like, he does a phenomenal job, and deserves praise.
Well, let's go on the other side too. So Andrew does all the illustrations, and so the more words I have, the less room there is for his cool drawings, which, let's be clear, is going to be way more a selling point, or like getting you interested in seeing what's going on, than like he'll get you in, and then you could read the words that we all came up with after the fact. So more words I have means smaller art, which is also the other thing. But yeah, this last episode we did is a little family holiday episode that is a necro prancer at a mall Santa adventure. And that one, oh my God, we had like a uh, delightful to frightful meter and like a bunch of other tables. Like there was so much that we had in that episode that like I seriously cut the word count after I'd like got it all together down to half or less. But with that said, one of the plans for us this year, and we're working on it slowly but surely, is to put together an omnibus book that will keep all these maps. We'll have more illustrations. We'll be able to use more space to tell these stories as it all comes together. So hopefully we'll have something like that out by the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops. I've got your maps up on another screen, and as as I mentioned to Andrew before we hit record on this episode, they are unique and distinctive and eye-catching, and all the good things that draw the eye. So wonderfully done, and again backed up with your wonderful wordplay and the structures. So if you haven't checked it out, please scroll down the link below, follow the Patreon link for sure. Have a look under podcast Mad Dungeon Maps. They are there. Beautiful, beautiful maps ready to be run. So all I can do is ask you to follow those links below. So you mentioned the omnibus coming in the future. That's down the line, 2023 onwards. Let's roll back a little bit and learn more about your inspirations and what keeps you engaged and moving forward as content creators.
You want to take that one first, Steve?
Sure. I mean, I am influenced by everything. So I'm writing all the time. And man, things just keep my attention. So right now, we have the projects that are coming out this year, and I'm not even done with them. But my latest obsession is like Book of Enoch RPG I'm putting together. That's like going to be more kind of Conan versus angels and Nephilim that are like Lovecraftian horrors. And so I've been slowly pegging away at that. But then, so when I'm getting these moods and I just want to write about stuff, I'm like rereading the stuff. I've rewatching Neon Genesis Evangelion right now because they're like, the enemies in that thing are like angels from wherever. And I'm like, all right, let's see what they're doing and see if that's something that's going to fit into what I'm in. But I go see movies. Yeah. So one of the things we're putting out right now this year, the plan hopefully is horror RPG that like I walked out of X this year, the horror film, and great film, like top of the list. And I'd already had like a system for this, like thing that we're putting out that was more of a superhero thing. So we'll put out varieties of this, but the first one will be based on that. But my brain as a creator, it's constantly going, I hear a song and I'm going to like bank off of that song. And then when I get something in my mind, I want to like surround myself with these sorts of things to continue to influence me. And so I'll listen to podcasts, I'll watch YouTube videos. I make it a point as a writer when I go to sleep at night that like I start thinking about what I want to be working on or what I'm currently working on, like as I'm going to sleep. So sometimes like I'll have dreams about it, or I'll wake up with ideas that I didn't have in the morning when I get up, and who knows what my brain's doing while I'm sleeping. But as a creative, I mean, I try to use everything around me, but then also focus and hone it.
And Steve, aren't you also doing a little room a day for a little Dungeon 23? You mentioned
Andrew, I am so excited. Yeah, so Dungeon 23, which is put out by Sean, who did Mothership RPG. But the idea is you get a calendar, and then on the left-hand side of the book, not like a daily planner, the left side has the dates, the right side has opening for drawing, right? So yeah, so
Sean McCoy, I think, is who you're talking about, Steve.
So I get what Andrew is so excited about drawing. This has been, Andrew, we haven't even really talked about this, but I'm so excited about the idea of like hand drawing things like while I'm doing other stuff. But I'll kind of hold up what I'm doing. I haven't even posted any of this yet, but I created in the beginning of Epic Levels with Andrew a spreadsheet that has every Dungeons and Dragons monster ever created. And I think it's like 3,000, 4,000 monsters or something like that.
Wow.
So with this, so the idea is you'll do a page a day or a room a day and have a mega dungeon at the end with like potentially 52 levels or whatever.
Well, no, each month you do a level, right?
You can. That's not what
you do. It however you want is what you do. Yeah. That's exactly how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. So mine's going to be 7 rooms each time, but I rolled on that chart just to give me random stuff to see what each level is going to be. And so it's like starts off with Rakasta, which are kitty people, like cat folk, cutie ones. And then after that was Astral Dreadnought. So I will show
that's
you.
A step.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know if you could see here, but there's like, I made a little kitty village and then go through a portal. And then after that, a little inside of an astral dreadnought. So I got a lot of astral creatures going.
That's very fun.
And then I've got a were dragon room I'm doing. Wow. But so the idea is at the end, you'll have this wild mega dungeon to run with. But I've just loved it as a keep the creative juices flowing. Nothing I really need to think of too hard. It's nothing I mean, I guess potentially we could put this out as content, but it's probably just going to be for me.
I don't know. I feel like the people want to know. We should be posting your Dungeon 23 on our social medias.
All right, so, you got it. It'll be there when you go look.
Yeah, by the time you wake up in the morning.
Share it. Your one idea could inspire hundreds, if not thousands, of others.
That's right. Tens of people will be inspired by our writings and drawings. For me, I like to draw. So and I'm kind of a doodler. So as I mentioned, I come from like an art background, and leaving the like kind of desire to do stuff that is valuable behind, I've started to just sort of try to gamify things that I draw. So the other day I was drawing I was drawing a coffee cup, and then I had this idea. I was like, what if like it was like there was some like grinds in the bottom, like coffee grinds, but like I could also see some like undissolved sugar granules. And I was like, what if there's a group of like scuba diving fruit flies that like want to risk the hot coffee water to like dive down and get. And so I was like, all right, well, throw this coffee cup drawing away. Let's draw this dungeon that's fruit flies scuba diving into an old coffee cup. So I think that what my answer here is just that, like, I tend to find strange inspiration from very sort of mundane sources. I also get inspired, like going to the House on the Rock was tremendously inspiring to me, like just filled my head with ideas. But there's also, I think that there is a plethora of phenomenal ideas and wellspring of creativity just laying around you all the time. If you can, like, kind of yes and it, and just be like, okay, here's I'm brushing my teeth, like, what kind of role-playing game is that, like.
Andrew says that he has done a toothbrushing dungeon. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Watch out, dentists of the world. I'm coming for you. I'm going to get all the dentists playing Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, I just I tend to, like, look at things that are around me and try to imagine, what if this was a game, or what if this was a monster.
There's
And
a concept I learned in film school called Kino eye, which is the idea if you're a filmmaker or a cinematographer or a photographer, that when you're looking at the world, that you can kind of see how things can be framed with composition.
so it's like D&D eye,
Yeah, so Andrew's thing is kind of like D&D eye, whatever
RPG
he's
eye.
looking at.
Yeah.
RPG eye.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
No.
just got like a wellspring of stupidity, and I say stupidity, but what I mean is, like, lowbrow creativity right underneath the surface that's just aching to burst out. So, like a chest popper from Aliens.
Nice. Great game, by the way, if you haven't had a chance to play that role-playing game.
Shout
What
out
was I
to
gonna say?
Andrew Gaska.
Yes. Pleasure to talk to. His cat is in the latest adventure, so definitely pick that up if you want to play a cat in the Alien game.
Don't do it, Jonesy. Justice for Jonesy.
I was going to say an apple a day keeps the dungeon at bay, but we moved on, and I thought I'd steal that moment back.
Good.
So you have told us everything. Well, you've told us many things. You can't tell us everything because you are both such deep wells of inspiration and creativity. You've told us what is happening at the moment, the Kickstarter, the podcast, and all those sorts of things, and what has inspired you and moved you on. But what about advice to help DMs, GMs out there that maybe want to run one of, or who should be running one of your maps, but may want to run one of your maps or their own games as creative people and used to this improv and role play aspect and releasing yourself into both character and the DM sort of seat? Any advice for those who want to take up that mantle?
All right. Yes, I run these games very regularly at conventions, and I would say, like, our adventures in particular. But my advice always is to don't let the rules bog you down. Feel free to go with the yes anding, use them as guidance, and remember that your players aren't just players. I like to think about them as the main characters in a film. There shouldn't be an adversarial thought in your brain as the GM. I mean, we could all relish a good death. Like, that'll happen. Go ahead and listen to our our album Armor Classy for DM killed my character, for me and Andrew complaining about that. But
Yes.
but a good character death is worth it. I like my bad rolls as much as I like my good rolls. That's a good advice for people, is don't
Enjoy
take
the
it
fumbles.
too seriously. Yeah, enjoy the fumbles as much as you enjoy the crits. Let the bad things happen to your character and keep it rolling.
The story is in the failure. What about yourself, Andrew? Any advice for? It can be player advice, can be DM advice, can just be gameplay advice.
Well, I think I would just, like to say that everything Steve just said is, that's sound advice. I heartily recommend, as a player, to embrace failure and trying to own failure, I think, is one of the more fun things that you can do at a table. You're like, I swing my sword and trying to hit the the gelatinous cube, and you miss somehow. I don't know. It seems like that
Your arm's all up in there now.
yeah, so like, make it fun, make it, make it exciting, add your own spin on the failure. I think the point of games, and I'm not a professor of games, but I probably should be. But the point is to have fun. So like, have fun with it. I would say both as a dungeon master, storyteller, and as a player, just try to have fun with it. And if you're thinking about running a game for the first time, just do it. Just
Yeah,
take a
don't
stab at
sweat
it.
the little stuff, man.
Yeah,
Like,
don't worry about
jump
it.
in, go into the deep end.
If you're really concerned that you're not going to run a great game, I'll give you Steve's telephone number. You can call him. He will walk you through every step of running a successful dungeon.
Yeah, and I do think that things like Critical Role might not be doing the best service for like what a game is or should be. I mean, you could have these great immersive character, long running campaigns where you like really get into it. But I mean, it's just as great to have like a one shot where you could just like have fun with your friends and laugh. The big thing to remember with like role playing games is about it's about hanging out with people, like you could play solo games or you could play video games, but the big thing about role playing games is you're talking to other human beings. So don't forget that either, like hang out and talk. I mean, I've made so many good friends through this hobby, and it's like something you had on the thing earlier is inclusiveness. And I think that's very important to the hobby. So being able to bring anyone in, and anyone could be whatever they want. So it's also role-playing games of all sorts, not just Dungeons and Dragons. There's so many different options for games to play, and we run and play tons of them. But they give you places to explore maybe who you are, or maybe who you'd want to be, or even people you never thought you'd be. Like, I mean, when earlier in like the 90s or 2000s, I never played female characters. Like, it just didn't even occur to me. Now I have like half of them, or like you could play whatever you want and just like explore what that space could be like.
Yeah, great advice. And so we can follow this on a epic level, on a high. Would
On an
you
epic
like to
high.
remind epic high? Would you like to remind everybody where they can find you on social media and on the internet, so we can go and support your fantastic content, everything you put out, the shows, the maps, the music, the Kickstarter, all of it, please?
Sure. So epiclevelsrapgods.com is where you can find everything. On Instagram and Twitter, you can find us at epic_levels. Just search Epic Levels on Discord. Facebook, also Epic Levels. What else we got?
Patreon.
Kickstarter, Patreon, Epic Levels. Yeah.
The Discord link is also on our website. And that's a place where you could actually like interact with us on a regular basis. That's also very fun. Another fun thing on the Discord is we have a channel for as we mix music and gaming. Put your favorite album art that would make good gaming. That's a fun channel we have on there. So all of your Mana Wars and your Rob Halford Judas Priest covers work great. But we also love hip hop. So like,
talk about some inspiration,
right?
Yeah, running through various album covers, trying to pick one out, and there's almost too many to choose from.
Just imagine you're role playing, you're playing as your favorite ranger, but you're on the cover of Green Day's Dookie. Like, just imagine the potential.
My range would be more like the cover from Americana, the Offspring album. We sat on the swing with the I think it's the cockroach next to him on the swing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's me and my beast companion. Speaking of which, in honor of the Snyder's Return logo, I've gone for Wyvern Ranger.
Nice.
It's a bit close to sort of Dragon Warrior, but I think we could, double up.
No, it's not
yeah,
doubling up
and-
at all. Wyvern has a poison-tipped talon. Let's not forget.
Indeed.
Yeah, you could hunt
Yes.
them down and track them, and then just point me at them, and I'll do the big damage.
There we go. There's a plan in place. So maybe if you would agree to come back on the show, we could potentially put that plan in progress. I'd love to get you back. Bit more music, more role play, just more great content you guys are putting out. So if you'd be willing to come back and join me in the future, it'd be an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely.
Sure thing. And thank you again for letting us join you today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam.
Yeah, not a problem. Just before we do go, just before we close it out, is there anything that you want to talk about that we may have missed in the interview? We've covered a lot, I realise, but I want to make sure that I give you guys a platform just in case something sort of come up at the back of your minds and you thought, I better mention that just to sort of make sure we get that promoted or signposted.
Come try and find us at a convention this year. We're going to go to a bunch of them. So look out for the nerds in denim jackets with cut sleeves, epic levels on the back.
Yeah, so plans
So come meet us.
roughly are Gary Con, Gamehole Con again, Dragon Con we do every year, potentially
MomoCon, North Texas RPG Con, Gen Con. Come find us.
All right. Well,
We'd love to meet you.
And I'm sure everyone would love to come and meet you too. I'm guessing that'll be in the events tab on your webpage, on your website.
Yep. You can
All right.
find all that stuff there.
Through the link in the description below. So scroll down. Again, for the final time, thank you so much for joining me. Love to get you back on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to understand more about you, how you got into it, your influences, and everything we can look forward to both now and in the future from Epic Levels.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you. Rock on.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the show, then go to www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com. Alternatively, you can find us over on Twitter @ReturnSnyder. We have a Linktree link in the description of this episode. And if you want to support us, come and join us over on Patreon, and we also have a Discord server. Please leave us a review because we'd love to learn how to improve the channel and provide better content out for those who are listening. Until we speak again, thank you.